Hello, my kindred friends. This is Christian. Today, we're going to do part two of our series on changing you from a collector into a creator. We will continue to use pixie dust as our base stamp set. Then we'll also be pulling in the Card Basics die and two different pattern papers. As I gather the supplies, I want to talk a little bit about what did we do last month. Last month, we took control of our joy. We are not comparing ourselves to anyone else. We control that. We have our own power, and no one else can have that over us. The second thing we overcame was getting ink on our stamp set. It was clear ink, but that still was ink, so that was a big initial step. This month, we're actually going to put ink on the stamp. Dark ink so we can have an image to color. I'll let you catch your breath, sit down, relax a moment before we start talking about ink. While you have a moment to compose yourself, let me talk about what I'm doing. I want to cut out my image in this with the circle die. So I want to make sure when I place it on the paper, I'm placing it in a spot that will allow me to have the clearance that I need for the oversized die. Time to tear off that Band-Aid and talk about ink. There are some tools that you will need to help prevent any of that staining from occurring on your stamp if that's what you are afraid of. I always have a wet chamois to clean my stamp, a damp microfiber cloth, some type of stamp cleaner that is not just a squeaky clean cleaner. I want a deep cleaner. And then a scrubby tool of some sorts. The type of ink you use will also determine if you will have some type of staining. Note, staining is not a problem. It actually helps you see your stamp better, especially when you're trying to line up words in a little line, or you are doing some masking techniques and you want to be able to see where those lines are going to interject. So staining is natural, but I know it's scary and not everyone likes to see that on their stamps. In this example, I am using an alcohol-safe ink. I stamped my image, wiped it clean first with a moist, wet chamois. Oop, I said that word everyone loves. I then use some stamp cleaner on my scrubby. I scrub it clean and then wipe it with another damp cloth to make sure that I have any residue off of my stamp. By cleaning the stamp immediately after using, I prevented staining from occurring. Because this was a crafting session, I keep my chamois in a sealed box to keep it wet the entire time. I do have some steam in there because I used hot water. I set aside my image to make sure that it was completely dry before I started coloring and started to cut out my base panels. This will be an A2 card, so I am making a card panel that is going to be 4¼ by 5½. I did select what portions of the paper that I wanted to have as my background. I wanted to have my stars and to be able to get the most amount of stars at the same time. So you'll see that I cut it down just a little funny, but I still end up with that 4¼ by 5½ inch card base. When my base is complete, I start to cut down my accent paper. I'm using a gold matte paper for this, and this is cut down to 2 inches by 5 inches. I will be using the same design on both cards. Having a go-to design in your back pocket is a great way to take away some of that angst of trying to figure out how to design a card, especially when we're going to start talking about coloring. I want you to think back. Go in your little Wayback Machine and travel back in time to when you were a kid. When you watched cartoons on TV, were they multidimensional? Or were they flat with just some shadows and other cues that gave brightness to the images? If you're in my Wayback Machine, they were flat colors. And that's okay. We can do that too. We are not taking and giving someone else control of our joy. We are not comparing ourselves to others. We are going to color with one color for each element, and we are going to get an amazing card at the same time. I want to challenge you to color an image. No pressure, no thinking, just coloring. One tone, nothing else. There's a quote by John Acuff that really sings to me, and I hope you take this into consideration as well. The quote is, "Be brave enough to suck at something new." It's okay not to have something perfect, and it's okay not to have something multidimensional. This is how we learn. You can start now and become a creator just by doing simple color tones, adding some highlights with a white gel pen, and you have the same amazing images as everyone else. With the image colored and cut out, it was now time to start working on the sentiment. For my stamping of the sentiment this time, I will be using a pigment-based ink. I chose a pigment-based ink for the properties of the ink itself. A pigment-based ink is going to be great for that fine detail. When we're looking at our sentiments inside of our stamp sets from Kindred, they're very fine lined, they're small periods or tittles on our eyes. They're just these little accents that are very delicate. To get the best image, using a pigment-based ink, you'll be able to have crisper lines and more depth to your sentiments. If you're new to stamping, pigment-based inks are not compatible with alcohol-based markers. So if you are coloring with an alcohol-based marker, you will see a lot of bleeding or dragging of color when you use a pigment-based ink. Some companies make hybrid inks. Hybrid inks are a combination ink that is safe to use with alcohol-based markers and also good to use for watercolor. If you're truly concerned with your stamps becoming stained, keep in mind the color properties and the type of ink you're using. Water-based inks that are typically utilized in alcohol markers or pigment-based inks, which are used for fine detail and crisper lines and watercolor, have less tendency of staining your stamp if cleaned immediately. This does not include your blue-based colored inks and your red-based color inks. If you're stamping in colored ink, you're going to get colored stamps. There's not much you can do outside of that, unless you really love colored embossing powder. All right, let's get caught up on what I've been doing on the card itself. The card base was cut out. The side panel was cut out. The image was cut out. And then I'm going ahead and I'm going to start assembling that. While I'm doing the assembly, I'm also contemplating how do I want my sentiment to land on this. It looks currently like my little character is just floating in the air. While in reality, I'm going to have her settled on top of the sentiment. Because I did do a single layer of color, I have to pay attention to the details of the card. So I did know that I had to darken the eyes of my character because of the alcohol safe ink that I used is not a very deep and intense black. And I wanted her eyes to really show. So by adding a little black ink with a fine liner pen, I'm able to make her eyes brighter. I'll also be using the white gel pen to add some simple highlights to her. When I'm looking at the eyes of my characters, I feel like that little white speck that shows that reflection of light truly brings the character to life. I applied foam tape to the back of the character and then also to the back of the sentiment. And because I can never lay anything down straight the first time around, I always add a little liquid adhesive to my foam tape because I know I'm going to have to lift it up or I'm going to have to shift it. I just have to embrace that I cannot do anything straight. Then finally, I added some gold dots along the lines of the stitched circle and some white highlights, and the card was done. I conquered two fears. One, coloring with a single color, and two, no stains on my stamp. For the second card, we're going to bring in two different characters to show that the same simple coloring does look good when you have more than one character there, as well as using some different dyes just to change it up a little bit. We will also be using the Flames paper pack, which is one of my absolute favorite paper packs ever, as well as a piece of glossy black cardstock, and then our white cardstock to stamp on. The process is the same. However, I did stamp each of the characters separately and continued to clean in between each of them to again avoid having that staining of the stamp. I have sped up and edited out information that was the same so that I can give you some more little tips. Sometimes when you have closed dies like this banner die where you can't see through it, you don't know how to really center your sentiment so that you can cut it out appropriately. I make a little jig by just cutting it out of a piece of black cardstock that I probably did something else on, and I use that to line up my sentiment strip die. It locks right into those little channels of that paper, and because that black paper is a thin paper, I'm able to cut through the die with no problems. I can use this jig over and over again, and I just store it in the back of my stamp pocket that I have my dies in place on. Just because the sentiment strip die is shaped this way, I don't have to accept it that way. I can modify this to make it the way that I wanted it. I was able to trim the sides down, and again, I cannot cut straight, so there's that. But I trimmed off the sides to make little tags so that I could have my ribbon look like it's waving and that the sentiment is higher in the front than the actual flappers in the back. And I'm sure they have technical words, but I don't know what they are. I started to do my coloring, which obviously is not this fast, but it is really fast compared to adding multi-dimensional coloring. You can whip through this because you're just putting that one color down and moving on to that next section. Unless you're like me and you forget a spot, then you're like, oh, what color was that? Oh yeah, I better go back there and color that in. That'd be a good idea. And then you're getting ready to assemble a card and there you find another hand that wasn't colored because you missed it somehow. Yeah, I know. It's life. Since we're stuck here watching me color, unless you fast forwarded through this, I don't blame you. You can, it's okay. I want to go back to that quote by John Acuff. Be brave enough to suck at something new. I want you to be brave. I want you to try something new. And it's okay not to be good at it. Because if you remember last month, we talked about our joy stealers of comparison, and that is not how we want to live. But then how do we get past that? We have to be brave. We have to try something and put yourself out there. It's okay. Every one of us has our own design takes. Every one of us has our own way of coloring. Every one of us has our own way of designing a card and how we want it to look. Some like really elaborate, some like more clean and simple. Those are all okay because this is about you being creative. You recharging your own internal juices so that you can cope with the world around you. And then you also get something pretty amazing out of it. You can color. You learned it when you were in preschool and in kindergarten. Would the 5-year-old you care if there was 3 color tone transition to get dimension? No, the 5-year-old you would be coloring a tree purple or the sun brown and the grass yellow, just whatever color looked pretty to you at that moment. Give yourself some grace. You're doing a great job and you are making amazing things. I know this video wasn't like a typical how-to video. This is a video that is trying to get you to be brave, to try something different and step out of your comfort zones. This is how we grow and how we learn. And I hope that you challenge yourself to try something new. Today we colored, we actually put ink on our stamps and we survived. Next month, we're going to do our final part of this series from being a collector to a crafter. We're going to show 2 different ways that you can color and add dimension to your cards. I hope you share your creations on the Facebook channel. I would love to see your single layered coloring. That would be amazing. Until next month, my friends.